there, and welcome to the Hit Like a Girl podcast. I'm Joy Rios, and today I'm talking with Ellen James, who runs R&D at Small Pharma. It's a company that's leading the world's first DMT clinical trials. DMT is a naturally occurring psychedelic tryptamine found in plants and the brain of mammals. And scientific evidence suggests that DMT offers the potential for rapid-acting and long-lasting antidepressant effects. And Ellen and I talk all about it. Enjoy! Ellen, thank you very much for joining me today. I am really excited just to have this opportunity to get to know you and get to know your organization a little bit better. And this is a conversation that we have is new to the podcast. So I'm really excited to hear what you bring to the table. Would you mind taking a moment to talk about your piece of the healthcare puzzle?
So my role is the Director of Research and Development at Small Pharma. Small Pharma is a neuro-pharmaceutical company, and we're currently developing a psychedelic-assisted therapy for the treatment of mental health conditions. A particular psychedelic we're working with is called DMT, but we do have a pipeline of other related things as well. We are the first company to take DMT into a clinical trial with patients, and our patients have major depressive disorder. The trial itself is in two parts, and we recently completed the healthy volunteer part of that study, and that was with psychedelic naive healthy volunteers, and they found the DMT to be safe and well tolerated, and that meant that we could move into the patient part, which we just initiated a couple of months ago. So it's very exciting, and we're working with many related people. So my role in the company is leading the setup and the management of that clinical trial. And so I have to bring together the various parties involved in bringing a drug through clinical trials. So academics who have been involved in this research for years, regulators, consultants, project managers at the clinical sites that we work with, the trial doctors, psychiatrists and therapists, and I have to manage Small Pharma's interests as well. And I really like that that idea of bringing together people that may not have the same like priorities, but bringing us all together and achieving something that we all believe in. So can tell you a bit more about how the psychedelic assisted therapy is, how we think it might work.
I wouldn't mind if we can just start, just for people that don't know what DMT is. How would you describe it?
Well, it's a psychedelic drug. It's known recreationally, and it's also a component in a South American brew called ayahuasca. It's the psychedelic component of that, and it's structurally very similar to serotonin. So it's actually found naturally in plants and in the brains of some mammals. It's been detected. It's a small molecule, and it binds to some receptors in the brain and induces a hallucinogenic psychedelic trip. It's very short acting, so when it's given by intravenous injection or inhaled, it can last 20 to 30 minutes maximum. In the ayahuasca brew, it's longer because in that mixture it can be taken orally, which it can't be otherwise. So we in our trial give it by intravenous injection, and it induces a very intense and can be profound visual and other sensory hallucinogenic experience. Most people lie back and lie with their eyes closed and experience things for for the 20 to 30 minutes, and then they come back to the room and they talk about it with the therapist.
So I live in Mexico. I live in Baja, and this as I've been living here, I've learned that this is kind of a destination where people come to have like a shaman-led ayahuasca experience. And from what I've heard, it's they're under supervision, similar to what you're saying, and people can have different experiences. Sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes they get sick. Sounds like definitely
on
get
ayahuasca, yeah.
yeah. And
it
then
doesn't happen with R1 because that's part of the mixture that they're having there. Yeah.
And then from what I understand, like you're not going to be holding a conversation with somebody. Like it's whatever it is that they're experiencing. It's internal in their mind, and there's somebody there just to make sure that they are safe. Is that so? How similar is that in the clinical trial with what you all are doing?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. We do quite an intensive preparation session with the volunteers. So because our psychedelic is very short compared to psilocybin, you may have heard of, from derived from magic mushrooms originally. So that experience can be up to 6 hours. So a lot of the therapy is around what they experience during that time, and they're guided through that 6-hour experience. Because ours is much shorter, we give a lot of emphasis to the preparation to make sure people go into it with intentions, so they can understand what might happen or what might not happen. And then afterwards, there's what we call integration. So what they experienced is talked about and put into context of their condition, or the things they might want to change about themselves, which they would have discussed with the therapist beforehand.
And I imagine that it's somewhat like you had hit on earlier. It's a little bit profound. Like they're able to maybe touch on things or access ideas that otherwise weren't available to them. Like, what is the response that people are getting?
Well, we think it that people with certain mental health conditions have these ruminative, ingrained patterns of thought, and it's across a few conditions like OCD and anxiety and depression, PTSD. So we think that the psychedelics induce an increase in brain connectivity, and that new neural pathways can be forged during the trip and in the integration afterwards. So it's kind of like a reset, and it's kind of theoretical. These things have been studied with brain scanning and in some early trials, but that's the kind of the logic behind how it would work for people. Yeah.
And is it the kind of thing that somebody would just do once, or would they do it multiple times? Maybe it depends.
Well, we certainly don't want this to be the equivalent to taking a daily antidepressant. So if that's the case, this is not going to work. So yeah, it would be once, and then it should last, several months. That would be ideal. Yeah.
Yeah. So from what I understand, like this type of drug is not something that's addictive. It's not the kind of thing that somebody would even want to do on a regular basis, I would imagine. And then in the way that you're describing it, for me, like just it makes me think of like, when you get stuck in a frame of mind and you're like, I don't know why I can't not think of this certain thing, even if I know it's not good for me, I'm just stuck in this pattern. And it sounds like this DMT is able to quite literally form a new path in your brain so that you can just sort of get out of that stuckness of like, okay, well, let me think a new thought, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, while you're on the trip, every part of your brain is able to talk to every other part of the brain. That's why you hallucinate. So everything's opened up, and then when you come out of the trip and you're with your therapist, that conversation can be the forging of a way of thinking.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
really powerful. That's a super
it should
powerful
be.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
how, like, has it changed? I imagine this isn't something that was even available to study for a long time. Can you talk us through, like, how has this even become possible in, what is it, recent years or so?
So we've been looking through the literature that's existed before in the DMT research, and there was some old studies, 50s, 60s, and then it all ground to a halt. And in the 90s, a researcher called Rick Strassman began to do some early clinical trials with DMT. I'm not sure how he convinced the regulators to let him do it, but he did. And from there, sorry, I'm just going to have water. Other researchers, our colleagues at Imperial College London, have taken up DMT research. There have been some others in between, but our sort of inspiration for our trial designs is mostly those two groups. And it takes a lot longer, essentially. I mean, it's not impossible. There are just extra steps in the approvals process, especially around handling, storing, and administering a controlled substance. DMT is in the Schedule 1 category. Other drugs like ketamine are in Schedule 2, so it just makes it more difficult, but it's not impossible. And in the UK, it's become quite a smooth process. The Home Office who issue the licenses, I don't know any instances where they've refused sites licenses to work with these substances. So it's happening. It would certainly be easier if those extra steps weren't there, but yeah, not
Okay.
impossible.
Well, what's the process for a patient to get involved in one of these clinical trials? Are they self-selecting, or are they getting recommended by a doctor?
On our studies so far, it's been a lot of interest from people that have read and heard about the studies, and they contact me or the trial sites. I redirect them to the trial sites, and they go through an enrollment process. We have several stages of checking people's suitability to be on the study. There are some strict criteria that we have in our trial design. And then there's an interview with psychiatrists and therapists to check, their suitability for this kind of study.
And then do they end up having a longer term relationship with the therapist, or is it like from that day? Are you, after they experience the DMT, are they working with the same person for a period of time?
Yeah, we try to keep to the same team. There's always two therapists, or a psychiatrist and a therapist, depending on the site. And we definitely try and keep at least one of that team consistent throughout the study. The study is following them for 3 months, and they have several in-person and remote meetings in that time.
And then can you share with us, like, if you have the data available, of like what have the results been for people who've gone through the 3 months?
We have just started the patient part, so I don't have anything on that yet. But the healthy volunteers, we dosed 32 healthy volunteers in a increasing dose design study, and we asked them this question: do you wish you had not gone through that experience? And none of them said they wished they hadn't gone through the experience. So we were really happy about that. And none of them had taken any psychedelic drug before. That was one of the criteria for enrollment. And to take something as profound and intense as DMT as your first ever psychedelic drug is a big ask. And they all tolerated it well. So we're really happy about that.
That's great. I mean, no regrets, feeling like they were safe, clearly.
Yeah.
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 Well, so can you tell me a little bit about you? How did you get involved in this work?
um, yeah, it's interesting the way I got here. I did a biology uni at Oxford Uni, and then I did a PhD at Imperial. My dad and my mum both work in science, and so for me, doing biology was just the natural home. I tend to choose the path of least resistance in my work, or at least in my education choices. I really love English, but I did biology. And yeah, I did my PhD and postdoc, which is the job after PhD, in molecular microbiology. So I worked in the field of pathogenic bacteria, studying regulation of virulence genes in first plant and then human pathogenic bacteria. And I was in my towards the end of 4 years of being a postdoc, which is the sort of beginnings of an academic career. And I felt like I had two choices. It was either apply for another postdoc position, which is a 3 to 4 year position, and then maybe become you call it tenured, but like a permanent position, or leave academia. And I felt that as a postdoc, I wasn't as focused and dedicated to that academic career as some others. I was in a very high achieving, successful lab and group and department. And I found myself taking on extra things like teaching students, maintaining equipment, looking after the radio chem facility, joining boards and things. And I realized that I didn't want to dedicate myself to just that one thing. I couldn't be a 20-hour a day academic, which some people did. I mean, they loved it, and that was their bread and butter. But I just needed more, and I liked that broad role, not just doing one thing. So I thought I should leave academia, which was really hard to do because, like I said, it was my family business, and it was really, really painful. But it was the right decision. A friend of mine who I work with let me know about a job in a clinical trials company. She actually applied for a job there, and then her friend told her there was another job, so she told me about it. And I liked it because I like the idea of it, at least because it still involves science and research, but more job security and more variety. And I thought I'd be good at it. It's more, doing the managing side rather than the hands-on side. So I joined this company called Trio Medicines, but it's actually a tiny subsidiary within a larger clinical trials company. And they run clinical trials for other pharmaceutical companies. But in this small subsidiary, we were developing our own drugs. So I was thrown into the world of drug development, and I began as the research manager, and then senior research manager, and then my line manager went on maternity leave, and then I was promoted to deputy team leader during that time. Maternity leave is up to 12 months in the UK, so she then didn't come back, so I was promoted to team leader. And I think women going on maternity leave is one of the great ways to step up in your career in the UK, because you can prove yourself at a higher level. The company doesn't have to commit to you at that level, and then once you've done it, you can see and they can see that you can do that job, which was good for me. And so then when then I went on maternity leave, and while I was on maternity leave, another ex-colleague of mine at Trio told me about Small Pharma, and their offices are really close to where I live. I spoke to the CEO, Peter, and I was walking around the park with my baby in the baby carrier, having the interview with Peter when she was about 4 months old. And then I started at Small Pharma when she was about 10 months old. And yeah, I started at Small Pharma before we were running a clinical trial. We were still at the preclinical stage with our previous development molecule, which is a ketamine-based compound. And when I started, we hardly had any money, and there were only 5 of us, and it was really small and really, yeah, just a really nice place to come and work. And we've grown, and now we're running a clinical trial. So I'm sort of finally in my element in Small Pharma, you know, using all the skills I learned in my previous job, and taking it even further. You know, this is a bigger study than I've ever run before. So yeah, it's really, really exciting.
What is I mean, for any, I've never worked on a clinical trial. I've only really seen it in movies, right? Where, is it anything like what you would imagine in the movies? Like, what's the culture and day-to-day life of having that particular job? Is it white coats in a lab?
Sorry, my cat's just coming in. She's just been meowing outside the door. There's no white coats. I mean, for it. So we're called the sponsor company, and that means that we're paying for it. It's what we want to happen. It's all for us. We design it, and we decide what's going to happen, and who to work with. But all the actual hands-on parts are done by other people. So we've got 2 companies that are the clinical trial sites. They're the ones recruiting, doing the dosing, doing all the patient interactions. We have another company that's analyzing the blood samples, and you know, lots of people that we have to add on, and that's the role of the sponsor, really, is to have the oversight and to make sure it's running and the right people are working on it and that everyone's doing their jobs properly.
That sounds like a pretty cool position, just as far as coordinating, making sure, like you had mentioned earlier in our conversation, of just like making sure all the right people are at the table, that are having the right conversations, they have the information that they need, and sort of being like the spoke in that wheel, you know, making sure that everyone is connected. Is that close to accurate?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's really it. And the reason that I like that being in the sponsor role, the research feels like it belongs to me and to our company, even though we're not doing the hands-on bit. It's yeah, we're not providing a service to someone else. Other people are providing a service to us, and I prefer that prefer that kind of oversight role. Yeah.
Right. Well, okay, so I imagine that the trial's going to go on for some time. It's not something that just finishes in, you know, like everybody's on the same 3 months. But if somebody wanted to, I mean, do you publish the results? If you wanted to like get the results of those studies, where would somebody look for that information?
We have to publish them within a year of the trial finishing on clinicaltrials.gov, which is a kind of clinical trials registry. It's actually US based, but most people register there. And we have to publish our results there, but we will also publish them in academic journals once we've written them up into a paper. And yeah, we're working on our first one based on some of the results from the healthy volunteer part of the first study now.
That's for super
Yeah.
exciting. I mean, I don't know, it's just kind of neat. It's a whole different kind of science that is being applied for folks. Seems like there's more opportunity for, like, it's just opening, I guess, not even just a neuro path, but an actual path for people who've been stuck in a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, we have to be careful that we don't like give false hope, because people could be very disappointed if it doesn't work for them. And we are doing it in a very controlled, um, you know, well-designed environment. So it's not the same as just trying it out for yourself. So I had to sort of give you those caveats. But yeah, like, it's really exciting to be doing something that's very different to what's currently on offer. And what's currently on offer doesn't work for everyone. And so hopefully this will work for some people that those current treatments don't work for.
Yeah. Well, Ellen, I
Yeah,
really
it's
want to
really, yeah.
I want to thank you so much for your time today. I'm excited to track where you guys go with this. I think it's going to be really interesting to see the progression over time. So if people want to connect with you or follow your work or connect with your organization, where would you direct them?
So our website's smallpharma.com, and we have Instagram and Twitter as well. And I'm also on Twitter at Ellen Heather.
Wonderful. I
So
will
yeah,
include that
follow me
in our
there.
show notes. Perfect. Well, thanks for taking this time with me today.
No problem. Thanks, Joy. Nice to speak to you.